Welcome back, part two this week. Last week we didn't get, one of the things I wanted to discuss and just bounce off you, the passing of Darren Daulton and Don Baylor.
Yeah.
And I mean,
tough week for baseball.
It was, I had the pleasure of working with Dutch Daulton with the '97 Marlins, and he came in and he I've never seen a three-way platoon. But they were on a three-way platoon at first base with Jeff Conine, Darren Daulton, and Jim Eisenreich, and whoever Jim Leyland felt was the guy to go with. They left two great guys on the bench, and in that position, and it was part of what wound up carrying him over the top. But Darren got there, and he was there about a week, and all of a sudden he was one of those leaders where all of a sudden he said, "This isn't a country club." I remember the players had a country club attitude, and things changed drastically by Dutch Daulton.
It's interesting. And sometimes you need a guy like that who'll come in and give him a voltage jolt and get him up. When you worked with him and you saw him every day, what was his approach that you saw?
It was interesting because he hit well.
That statement says a lot.
I was shocked. He hit well, and when he said, "This is it," he called me Who Man, and Who Man. I mean, this is it, and I'm like, Dutch, you're hitting, and we would talk a lot, and I didn't talk that much after games or whatever.
This guy,
we would talk a lot, and it was usually in the trainer's table
and
after the game.
There's a signpost outside the stadium that Julio talked a lot too. So.
No, but the interesting thing with Dutch was he was the first guy at the ballpark, and he was the last guy to leave. And part of that was I called him Michelin Man, because he looked like the Michelin Man, because he would have ice packs on with towels wrapped around him, and that's exactly what he would be there for about an hour after the game. After everyone had left, the media, he's in the trainer's table, drinking a beer, sitting there looking like the Michelin Man, and I'd go in there and we'd just chat and everything like that. He was living in Clearwater. I was from Tampa. He had married a high school friend of mine, Lynn Austin, who was the Hooters waitress, and I remember and she was living in Clearwater. She was from Tampa and moved to Clearwater to work at the original Hooters and everything like that. And one of his my favorite Dutch Daulton, he said, we got divorced and we had to settle with the rights for the kid and the visitation rights and everything like that. I wound up moving to Clearwater so I could be next to my child, and she winds up the divorce settlement, and she winds up taking half of everything plus half of my income, and wound up being around $80 million I wound up giving her between upcoming salary and this and that and all this kind of stuff. He said, and it's finally behind me, and I'm ready to start baseball, get away from it. And first spring training game, we're at Jack Russell Stadium in Clearwater. And I squat down to take the first pitch, and I look over the pitcher's shoulder, and there's a Hooters billboard with my ex-wife staring me right in the eye. He said, I couldn't get away from her at all. He said, she takes me for everything, and then I got to stare at her every single game when I'm catching them.
That's why he wanted to get traded.
Yeah.
That's why he never wanted to be with that team again.
That's really funny.
But, yeah, so...
That's a bad day at the ballpark.
That is. But interesting and about how you play the game and everything. He was still hitting. He was pinch hitting a lot, playing a little bit of first base. And the reason he won it, he says, it just took too much work getting ready for games and recovering after. But I do it if I could catch. But if I'm not catching, I feel like I'm not playing the game at all. Is that?
Yeah.
Think about that.
Yeah.
That last year, because there was talk he could go to the American League and DH for a few years and tear it up. If I'm not catching, I'm not playing the game.
Well, there you go.
And the guy who did DH and tear it up was Don Baylor.
Yeah. And managed and whatever.
Yeah,
Your thoughts of Don Baylor?
I remember Don Baylor when he came up with the Orioles, and I remember getting his cards as a kid, and for some reason keeping them. I don't know what it was about Don Baylor, and then realizing how good he was, but just underrated, I think, as a player. I mean, he's one of those guys, I think, that because, again, I don't watch the American League as much as the National League, but I think he's one of those guys who just kind of was taken for granted. Played on some really good teams.
There were a lot of them back there.
Yeah, and was just one of those guys that you just kind of Don Baylor. He's only hitting 300 again. I mean,
again. And again. He's the only All-Star again.
Yeah.
And again. He's only leading the league in this again. Okay. Yeah, same way. And he just wasn't a very flashy guy. He didn't draw attention
and wasn't
to
a flashy
himself.
manager, but he won.
Yeah, he didn't draw attention to himself. He wasn't a big personality. He was just a really good baseball guy.
Yeah, he was.
And then yesterday, the passing of Felo Ramirez, and most of you guys don't know Felo. Felo got a job with the Marlins in 1993 as their Spanish broadcaster, and up until April of this year, he was already in his 70s when the Marlins hired him.
Okay,
that's mind blowing.
That's crazy. Yeah.
But he was a legend. He had done 30 some odd World Series, 40 Caribbean Series. They say Felo probably broadcast more baseball games than anyone in history. And
that makes sense.
Don Larson's perfect game, Felo called it.
Wow.
Not Jackie Robinson. Roberto Clemente's 3,000th hit, he called it. Hank Aaron, they broadcast that game. That call is in the Hall of Fame. He broadcast it from the roof of Fulton County Stadium because that was where they put the Spanish radio that day. But he called that. He called all three of Muhammad Ali, Joe Frazier fights, and Sonny Liston and Ali. I mean, but he was such a legend among that Cuban community that the Marlins hired him in his 70s.
Smart on their part. Yeah. Good move.
And up until April, I want to say April 15th, April 17th of this year, the Marlins were in Philadelphia. He slipped coming off the bus, 94 years old, although others say 96 years old because it's
kind of iffy.
Iffy on his exact age. Some say he was born in 21, others 23. And slipped, fell on his head, and a lot of blood taken. He was in a Delaware hospital for almost a month before being transferred to Miami, and he passed away yesterday. But I had the pleasure of working with Felo, and one of the guys, Felo and my father, and not to get personal here, but two people, and the trait they had, they were both Cuban, but the trait they had, they could communicate without words better than anyone I have ever met in my entire life. He was here. You guys don't speak Spanish. My dad would have. You guys would have been laughing and whatever.
All right, I met your dad.
And that ability, yes. Felo would, after the game, getting on the bus, going back to the hotel or whatever. Felo, if the Marlins won, he would always look at the players. And if the Marlins lost, he would always look at. He'd look at that, and everyone just laughed, and they enjoyed it. Every player, whether they spoke Spanish or not, loved Felo. I never knew anyone that didn't. But it reminds. So the Marlins started in '93. Felo called games up until 2017 in Spanish at the age of 94, 96. Wow. There's still three broadcasters that have called games since their team started. And I'll give you Bob Uecker. The Seattle Pilots were in Seattle, moved to Milwaukee. 1 year later, in 1971, Bob Uecker started with the Brewers, and he's still calling games on radio today. Who are the two?
I got no idea.
And you like broadcast. You wanted to bring up broadcast.
You like broadcast.
Felo was on that list.
But I don't listen. I mean, growing up in Gainesville,
I would have said Vin Scully.
Vin Scully was my first one.
Well, the Brooklyn Dodgers
forever, yeah.
But he was with the Los Angeles Dodgers. Jaime Jarrín started when the Dodgers moved to L.A. Jaime started calling radio. So 1959, Jaime's been doing Dodger broadcast.
And the third one I didn't have any. Go ahead.
No, you got it.
He was with the Kansas City Royals broadcaster.
1969.
Inception.
48 years later.
It's crazy. It's and it's I forget his name off the top of my head.
Denny Matthews.
Denny Matthews. And I'd never heard a Royals game on the radio.
He was just out of college when they hired him.
That's pretty good. Pretty good. He's at one job, one gig.
Yeah.
And he's been if you know of Denny Matthews, I mean, send us a message or something. I would like to know more about him.
It's kind of interesting. And Dwayne Stats, 1998, the Tampa Bay Rays hired him, and he's still doing games. Dwayne Stats for the Tampa Bay Rays.
Yep. Didn't he used to do the Cubs games?
He did, but there were no Tampa Bay Rays before that. He did. He was on there with Stone.
With Stone, with Stoney.
And on your list, I'm looking at his list right here. One guy that strikes me is Mike Shannon. One of the players that made a successful transition to the broadcast booth, because there's a lot of guys who play and go to the broadcast booth.
Most guys.
But Mike Shannon's been pretty good.
Pretty good.
Almost 50 years. And Mike Shannon does and I don't know if he's still doing it, but did a 2-hour post-game show after doing it from a studio they had down in Busch Stadium, which is
it works.
kind of interesting.
You got some questions
Kenny
for us?
Harrelson. Yeah, here we go. Okay.
Kenny Harrelson.
Yesterday, and we're going to play Family Feud.
We got 5 minutes.
We got the Gilly
5
family. We got the
Me.
okay.
Well, my girlfriend's
and since you're youngest, you can. We're not going to do
I'm
the
youngest?
buzz in or
He's
whatever.
younger.
You're younger than,
Okay,
than
all right.
Bob. You get to play, or you
pass.
can pass.
Okay, all right.
Okay.
Okay.
And the thing is,
We don't know any of these stuff.
no,
We
you guys
have
don't
no
know
idea.
anything. Adrian
That's
Gonzalez.
before we do
Adrian
this.
Gonzalez. Adrian Gonzalez.
Yes.
You know him?
I know who he is. Yes, I got his card.
I've never met him, but yes, go ahead.
Okay, Adrian Gonzalez.
Yep.
Last night.
Yep.
Okay, for the Los Angeles Dodgers in their win, collected the 2,000th hit of his career.
Yes, he did.
Did you see that?
I saw the highlights.
Became the 11th active player. When the season started, there was only 6. 5 guys have gotten their 2,000th hit this season. Is that amazing?
At least one guy
Making
got it.
11. So here it is. There's 10 other guys that have 2,000 hits that are active in baseball.
I'll pass.
Okay? Now, here's the rules, though. Unlike to steal it back, when he runs out and he
Okay.
gets his 3 X's, you've got to name 2 off the list.
2,000
So do you want to
hits.
name and eliminate as many as possible and force him to name 2?
I'll
Or do you
I'll
want-
still go with the 2. I'll try the
You
2.
got
I
2?
don't know I don't know them, so
Okay, Bob. 10 guys.
if I have to just guess 2, as
10
opposed
guys
to 10.
with 2,000 hits. And you can see this little graphic that Eddie created here with the numbers right there. No. That's
Yeah,
a
no,
little
I'm
too
not
much.
creating that.
Robinson Cano.
Robinson Cano is number 6 on the list. Robinson Cano. We've got number 6.
Robinson
ding.
Cano. Let's see. 2,000th hit. Well, Mike Trout got his 1,000th hit, so that's out. Golly, I don't.
Come on, we got to go.
I gotta go.
We only
I'm
got 3
trying to
minutes.
think. He's
You got-
he's one of the.
You only got 1.
Miguel Cabrera.
Miguel Cabrera. Miguel Cabrera is number 5 on the list. Okay? As soon as I write, I'm going to come to you, and you got 3 seconds.
Okay.
Cabrera, you be thinking. This isn't bad for writing upside down.
Albert Pujols.
Okay.
Okay. Albert Pujols is number 3 on the list. Number 3 on the list. Pujols. There's 2 guys with 3,000.
Well,
And you haven't gotten
Adrian
any of
Beltre.
those. Adrian Beltre is number 2. Did I help
Man.
him? I'm sorry.
Yes,
dude.
you did. That was going to be one of my steals because he wasn't going to mention Beltre.
Adrian Beltre. I was thinking it was 2,000 hits only, not the 3,000 hits.
Well, if you, it's hard to get. It's hard to get 3,000
till you get 2,000.
Right. It's
You're doing good. You got 4 so far. There's still 6 on the list.
6 on the list.
If you get 9, he's out of it
he's
automatically.
automatically out of it. I said Cabrera.
2,000 career hits, active players.
Oh golly, I can't think of anything else off the top of my head. This is your chance to steal.
Okay, you got 3 seconds to name
3
another
seconds.
one. 1, 2, 3. Man. Okay, that's 1 X.
Yep.
You got another 5 seconds for another one.
That's his turn. That's his turn.
There's still 6 guys.
There's still 6
These are big
guys.
stars. They've been around a while. They got
Big,
2,000
big,
hits.
big, big
One's
guys.
got, look, the number 1 guy's got 3,000.
Right.
3.
Right.
Man. Okay, that's
No,
2 X's.
2 X's.
You're down to your final
My
X.
final X. And
I think Eddie was good
I'm
stealing
vegging, I'm
this
vegging
because-
out on it right here because I just can't think of.
I might not. I may not give a 1.
This, I
You got 3 seconds.
I got
Brandon Phillips.
Brandon Phillips. Brandon Phillips will hit it in the next week. He's at 29.91 and will become the 7th player this year to go on the club. But as of right now, he's got 1991.
I was going to say 29.
Man,
Yeah, he's going to be
Brandon Phillips was a heck guess, but Brandon Phillips is number 12 on the list.
All right, I
That
get
doesn't
2.
count. You got 2.
Number
1?
Jose Reyes.
Jose Reyes
That was a good
is
guess.
number 8 on the list. Number 8
That's a good guess.
is
Jose
Reyes. And
That
one
makes
more.
it easy. So I steal with Ichiro.
And I didn't even think about Ichiro. And I watch the Marlins all the time. Duh.
Yes, I steal the show.
Ichiro number 1.
Dun, da, da, da.
Potato
Carlos
head.
Beltran, number
Beltran.
4. Cabrera number 5. Cano number 6. Matt Holliday.
Matt
number
Holliday.
7.
Matt Holliday is one.
Yep.
Jose, that's how they do on Family Feud. After he
Yeah,
says
yeah.
it, they repeat it.
Yeah,
Oh,
right.
Matt Holliday.
Yeah. Yep.
God.
Reyes is number 8. Number 9,
myself.
Victor Martinez.
Oh, I would not have thought that one.
And number 10 and 12 have something in common. One just did it about a week and a half ago for the Braves, and number 12 is going to do it for the Braves in a couple weeks. So who's number
Matt
10?
Kemp?
Not Matt Kemp.
Nick Markakis.
Nick Markakis is number 10 on the list. Markakis with 2,020.
Nick Markakis, all right.
And who's the other one?
Congratulations, Daddy.
And Adrian Gonzalez.
I can't believe I forgot Ichiro. I watched the Marlins all the freaking time.
I know, you missed it, dude.
2017 Mr. Potato Head Award.
But that's good stuff.
Hey, listen, we didn't get a chance to talk today, so maybe next week we'll talk about the umpires. We talked a couple weeks ago about being criticized and the.
I'll tell you, you know, my take.
We don't have time. We're out of time.
No, we still got 2.5 minutes.
No, we're out. We're past.
Okay.
We're out. We got to go. We'll talk about that next week. So write in your comments below. Hope you get a chance to watch some baseball. I can't believe you forgot Ichiro. I win today.
He wins. Yep.